at some level, I imagine, the specially constructed environments that occur in behavioral
starting to play with oil painting instability. I've just mixed up an array of yellows, golds, browns, and I'm just going to play with this drip segment over here on the right. And then I may get into some bright greens throughout these loops. I'd like to do some fills, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Psychedelics as a source of illusion, this is more important. Another of the great family of illusions are, in thinking about them, I call them ontological illusions, illusions of states of being, which may or may not, in fact, be reflected in reality. UFOs, Bigfoot, crop circles, the entire panoply of poltergeist phenomena, and this sort of thing, ontological illusions. And these are very interesting. I mean, one could give time to this alone, because there are persistent ontological illusions in the human sensorium, such as angels, elves, demons, jinns, afrits, nixies, and sprites, that crowd. And there are ontological illusions that seem somehow tied to the evolving modalities of the group mind. UFOs are an obvious example. I mean, aside from the fact that people have occasionally seen strange things in the sky, the UFO archetype really emerges in the late 40s with the Rainier lights, and then a whole set of taxonomic features of this particular brand of illusion coalesce. The silvery discs, the alien denizens with the cat eyes and the rubbery flesh, those same guys who give you unscheduled proctological examinations in the middle of the night. But notice that that particular taxonomic feature has been added recently through the assiduously careful scientific research of Strieber and company. So these things are a cattle mutilation is an interesting one, very confined in time and space. The crop circle thing, similarly. It's not that there aren't crop circles, but that what we have is essentially a pattern in an English wheat field, but then radiating out from that are the illusions of those who cast their gaze upon it, those who proclaim it, telluric communication or particle beam research carried on by the Air Force, or in one version it was supposed that a particular crop circle had been decoded, found to be a lost Sumerian language, which when decoded said basically, don't stop here. It was essentially a no parking zone for time machines. They're saying, this entire century just maintain speed and, do not stop. Psychedelic illusions. Again, this is a related category, but different from these ontological illusions. By illusion, I mean that these are confrontations with phenomena, an apparently subjective ground and an assumed rational observer, where then there is a more than ordinary amount of ambiguity. I mean, most of reality is illusory. It's just that we do each other the courtesy of not pointing this out. You know, actually you trace a very thin data path through the world, and most of what we assume without question, we have very little evidence for. I mean, something as simple as, well, like that Mount Everest is the highest mountain in the world. Well, first of all, very few people have ever seen it. I saw it, and because I saw it from a distance of about 500 miles, it looked quite small, and my own testimony as to whether it was the highest mountain in the world would be fairly unreliable. And besides, what does that mean anyhow, and how the hell do you figure it out? I mean, here we have one mountain in the Himalayas and another in Bolivia, and you're telling me you know which is the higher mountain? It must rest on a whole bunch of weird and fishy assumptions resting on even shakier data. So, and that's just the question of the highest mountain in the world. Give or, you know, leave alone the state of your lover's heart, or your banker's for that matter. What's important about the psychedelic family of illusions is that they propel the entire issue of illusion to center stage, because they demonstrate that the assumed bedrock of quote-unquote ordinary perception is in fact no bedrock at all. It's simply a very soft dwell point somewhere in the mysteries of metabolism. And the consciousness, whatever its relationship to the brain, is spectacularly affected by the perturbation of the physical brain by endogenously introduced pseudo-neurotransmitters of some sort. And to my mind, this is very interesting. You know, Alexander Shulgin has secured in his work that you can take a molecule that is completely inactive, and by moving one atom to a different place on the ring, you can change this into an active compound. Now, it seems to me you could hardly have a neater demonstration of the quantum mechanical foundation of consciousness. Now, it seems to me you could hardly have a neater demonstration of the quantum mechanical foundation of consciousness, because you've moved one atom and you've moved the mountains of mind 500 miles from where they were resting when last you looked. It's quite spectacular. And it argues then that mind, which strangely enough, the materialists always claimed this, they just put different emphasis on the words. Mind is a kind of iridescence upon metabolism. For the materialists, that was a dismissal, because to them what iridescence meant was a tertiary phenomenon, not inimical to the structure of matter, but necessarily perceived only through the intercession of an observer. See, that's what iridescence is. It's somehow a more fragile part of nature than the rocks, the trees, and the waters, because it's a play between light and mind. Again, a kind of illusion, a mirage. Now, in a very different category of illusion, and this is one worth considering because it's the one we tend not to place in this category, and that is the illusion of materialism. This has broken down completely. The idea that the material world was real sustained the investigation of nature from Parmenides to the early years of the 20th century. Virtually the entire history of human engagement in the abstract intellectual modeling of matter was assumed to be pretty much as presented in perception, solid, enduring, having simple location, meaning, it stays where you put it, and when you look there again, it's there. That sort of thing. Now, one of the best kept dirty secrets of Western civilization is that the core science, which is physics, the science which was always the envy of all the other sciences for its mathematical formalism and its incredible predictive ability, because it's not unusual in physics to predict from theory an experimental result to the third or fourth decimal. This is spectacular congruence between theory and experiment. You don't get that in the social sciences, or even in physical, need I mention, or even in physical chemistry. However, the investigation of matter has now been pushed to such extremes that matter has shed its easily recognized and familiar face, and it has become something much slipperier, much more dependent on the presence of the observer, much less easily located in space and time, something much more of the nature of thought than of the familiar conception of matter. This word has not reached even as far as biology yet. The biologists are still laboring under the notion of the reality of physical material. If any of you read this book that was published last year with much to do called Consciousness Explained, actually it should have been called Consciousness Explained Away. Here was an effort to drag out all the old material paradigms and explain away consciousness. The problem is matter itself has taken on the qualities of mind. And as this realization relativizes the life sciences, I think there is going to be a new interest in the potential for psychedelics to elucidate mental functioning, because what will become respectable, you see, is talk of the observer. This is what has invaded physics, the most rarefied and formal of all the sciences, had, in order to make sense of its enterprise, allow the observer a kind of primacy with the thing observed. As this seeps into the life sciences and psychology, hopefully the phobia of actually involving yourself in your field of study that informs all these reductionist to ratomorphic types in the schools of psychology will be overturned. Well, having flayed that dead horse sufficiently, another category of illusion that needs to be addressed, I think, is how would one call it? Well, basically philosophical illusion, or philosophical/religious illusion. This is the idea that by a direct appeal to intuition, we can somehow gain a foothold on truth. I think this is as specious as the notion that we can gain a foothold on truth through reason or experiment. This foothold on truth idea may have to be given up. I'm sure some of you have heard me recall the situation where Wittgenstein was raving about something, and one of his students said, but is it the truth? And he said, well, it's true enough. And this is really means a great divide has been crossed when you can say that, because it means you understand now that you are no longer a fairy in a platonic super world, but that you are actually a monkey with a brain full of mush trying to sort out, what's right in front of you. True enough is what we should probably rest with. And, illusions abound. For instance, I was speaking of these religious ontologies. I was talking to someone recently who amazed me, because I've always thought of them as a person of great intelligence, but who would never be reclaimed from the arms of Mother Church. And we had dinner last week, and he said, I realized it finally comes down to, do you believe the universe is being run by the ghost of a Galilean politician? And he said, put that way, I realized that it wasn't. Other religious myths are less easily undone, I think. Monotheism has an appealing philosophical neatness, but it leads apparently to clitorectomy. So, you want to watch that. This search for philosophical neatness may make for strange bedfellows. And of course, Buddhism, I love the illusion of Buddhism. It's the illusion that illusion can be transcended. And again, not really doing genuflection to the animal nature. It's amazing to me. I mean, if you were to meet a termite who stated that his or her goal in life was the perfect modeling of the cosmos, you would think it was quite a comic undertaking. And yet, how different are we that we should presume to more than a shadow of the truth? Well then, finally, or I don't know finally, but completing my laundry list here, a shadow of the truth. Well then, finally, or I don't know finally, but completing my laundry list here, linguistic truth, or the truth of language and the illusions that language weaves, because someone quite intelligent said language was invented so that people could lie. In other words, it gives you that fudge factor of obfuscation, where someone says, why did you do that? Well, the best approach is, I didn't do that. You thought I did that. What you thought you saw, you didn't see. In other words, I suppose that lawyers are probably the people who have done the finest work with language, and behind them politicians. And the true potential for language to elevate and to unite the community was early on betrayed into the production of illusory ideological goods, which could then be marketed among the people and to spread confusion. Psychedelics reflect on this, because psychedelics stretch and pull and melt and recast the illusion-producing machinery of language. I mean, I think that if you had to say the one thing that psychedelics do for everyone, whether they have a good trip or a bad trip, because it's up to them to interpret what they make of this, is it shows you the relativity of your cultural viewpoint. You know, that it's just your point of view. You inherited it from a geographical area, a culture, a set of parents. It has no relationship whatsoever to anything anchored in some kind of metaphysical superspace. It's just your cultural point of view. And travel actually does the same thing, and I've always felt there was a weird affinity between psychedelics and travel, and I suppose many people have, or we wouldn't call it a trip, and we wouldn't call it a journey. But travel shows you the relativity of culture, and what's really happening when you travel, you see, is you're moving from one language domain to another. You don't think of it that way, but that is in fact what is happening. You can never see the Amazon jungle if you keep intact the bubble of linguistic assumptions of the place you started out from. Every place will withhold its secrets from you. I learned this in the Amazon because the first time I went, I had virtually no botany. And to me, the jungle was green. That's what it was. And it was many shades of green, and it was beautiful, and it was this and that, but it was basically green. The second time I went, I was with a lot of botanists. And within days, you learn the families. That's how they do it. With the same taxonomy I'm here applying to illusion was really developed to describe plants and animals. So you learn the families, the plants with square stems, the plants with the opposed leaves, the plants with the particular flower structure. Once you know families, then you have a linguistic wedge in. But the corrupting or curious thing about language is that, like all tools, it shapes its user in ways that are not suspected until it's too late. So, for instance, the way in which Western civilization is totally obsessed with the subject-object relationship, and it's the basis of our science, our polity, our relations to commerce, the concept of product. All of these things come out of the subject-object relationship, which is an aspect of language. So I point all this out because in talking about my new book, somebody said that I had gone too far. And I was amused because it implied, from what? It's not like there is a King's X where graybeards in white coats tend the sacred vestal fires of reality. There is no reality. There are only people who know this, and people who don't know this and are therefore being manipulated by the people who do know it. This is true, or true enough. And, one of the things that has amazed me with my own personal career, because, I started out basically shoveling snow in a cow town in Colorado, and by fate or who knows what, come to the present position. And what I notice as I traverse levels on a supposed ladder of success, where you would expect there to be more and more competition and people and activity, Actually, it gets emptier.
So that was a lot of fun. I have no idea where that's going, but it looks unstable, so that's, I guess it's headed in the right direction. That's it for the moment. That's Adam Sturch podcasting from the Motion Mansion, Taos, Mexico, working on oil painting instability. Thank you. Have a good night, Earth.